Caitlin, I'm going to go over your Benjamin Franklin paper with you. And when I look at the rubrics that I'm going to use to grade your paper, I'm looking for your LY words. And when I look at your paper over here, there aren't any LY words marked. No who whiches are marked either. No www.asia, quality adjectives, strong verbs. So if I was going to grade it right now, because nothing's marked, I would have to give you zeros on those. Spelling and capitalization, punctuation usage, I could go ahead and grade it for that, and I am going to go through part of this with you. Double spaced. You don't quite have it double spaced. When you double space, I want you to go ahead and use the full 2.0 and write in a 12-point font and stick with Times or Helvetica for your font. So I want you to make those changes so that I can go ahead and give you credit that you've got it double spaced, the 2.0. You do have a title, and that right now is the only point I can give you. So let's go ahead and look at some of your paper, and let's look for some of these dress-ups, because when we're writing, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to find your sources. And I gave you the source, but you can be picking out appropriate sources next. And then you're going to summarize and outline. And then you're going to write and dress up and format it. And right now, you have your source. I gave it to you. You've turned in your outline, and you're in the writing. You wrote it. But right now, I'm looking to see if you can dress up and use those stylistic techniques for dressing up your paper. So let's look through your paper. Benjamin Franklin was born on January 17, 1706 in Boston. Okay. N should be lowercase. There's no reason to capitalize it. His father, Josiah Franklin, was a soap and candle maker. His father, Josiah Franklin, you need a comma here. This is what we call an appositive, and that's when we give information for our reader. And in a positive, you should be able to take it completely out and it still makes sense. His father was a soap and candle maker. And so Josiah Franklin, it just gives us additional information. We put our positives inside commas. He had 17 children, 7 with his first wife and 10 with the second wife. Let's get rid of this comma here, and we'll either use a hyphen or a colon since you're getting ready to do a list. Benjamin was the 15th child and the last son. Even though Benjamin had success at the Boston Latin School, this should be lowercase, he was removed at the age of 10. And right here, this even though Ben had success at the Boston Latin School, you started with a clause. And our www.asia is a clause. And after our clause, we have our subject, noun, verb. So you use that comma correctly. But also remember, if you start with your sentence and you have your www.asia afterwards, you don't use a comma. So no comma there. You've got the comma right here, but we don't capitalize after our clause. He was removed to work with his father at his father's candle making business. But dipping wax and cutting wicks didn't make his imagination soar. Maybe his father had done this to disinterest him from going to sea like his brothers did. So, Josiah apprentices Ben at the age of 12 to Ben's brother's print shop. Ben took to it like duck to water, despite his brother's harsh treatment. James refused to publish Ben's writing, so Ben adopted, I can't say that word, under the name Mrs. Silence Dogwood. James, we don't need an apostrophe. We have an apostrophe when we have two nouns together. Noun, noun, and the first noun possesses the second one. Her witty and imaginative letters were published in his brother's newspaper. And see right here, you have a noun, noun, and the first, so you did that correctly there. The newspaper was the New England, and that's got to be spelled wrong. And since you're doing a title, it's either going to be underlined or it's going to be in italics. And Ben's writing delighted everyone who read them. Now see right here, you have a who which. So you should have underlined it. And you can underline in Word by going home. I think I'm going to have to stop the inking just a second. By going home and then click the underline tool. And then also I want you after it to put who which, so I know that you know how to do these stylistic dress-ups. James's, and here we go with this James again, James's. We don't have a noun after it. We have a verb, so we do not need that apostrophe. James was outraged when he discovered Ben was the one who was writing the letters. Soon after, Ben abandoned his apprenticeship and went to New York. He settled in Pennsylvania, which would be his home for the rest of his life. Franklin furthered his education at the printing trade in Philadelphia. He lodged at the home of John Reed in 1923, where he met and courted Reed's daughter, Deborah. Now right here, he lodged. To me, that's a nice strong verb. So that you could have marked that he lodged. You didn't say he stayed, he lodged. And that is a better strong verb. Let's see if I can get it in here. Here we go. I've got to close that. He lodged. And so after that, put strong verb. You don't have to pick the same dress-ups that I'm picking. You might want to pick other ones. Where he met and courted Reed's daughter, Deborah. And right here you use that appositive correctly, because Reed's daughter equals Deborah, and so you have the appositive. Here it ended in a period, but it's still closed. The following year, Franklin left for London under the auspices of Governor William Keith of Pennsylvania, but he felt duped when his letters of introduction never arrived. So Franklin was forced to find work at print shops. Being employed, he took advantage of the city, attending theater, mingled with the populace, going to coffee houses. He also continued his lifelong passion of reading. Being employed, he took advantage of the city, attended theater, mingled with the populace, going to coffee houses. He also continued his lifelong passion of reading. There's something wrong with this sentence, but I got to think about it a minute. Being employed, he took advantage of the city. By, I think that would fix it, by attending theaters, mingling with the populaces, and going to coffee houses. And then we're going to have to put a semicolon here. He also continued his lifelong passion of reading. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about what I've done here. Being employed, he took advantage of the city. Now, being employed is just an introductory little clause. So here's our subject noun. He did what? He took advantage of the city. We've got a prepositional phrase, another prepositional phrase, by attending theater, mingling with the populace, and going to coffee houses. And see right here, you've got parallel verbs. Very good. They all end in ing. And these need to be parallel. And we have a series here. We have attending theater, that's 1, mingling with the populace, and 3, going to coffee. So we need our commas just like you have them. He also continued his lifelong passion of reading. And I put a semicolon here, and if you remember, a semicolon is the same thing as a period. And because you feel like these are closely connected and you just wanted to use a comma, but we've got another subject, noun, and verb going here, we have to either use a semicolon or a period, or we'll have created a run-on sentence. Because this isn't a clause, this is another sentence. I'm still looking for some dress-up those. Franklin managed to publish his first pamphlet, A Dissertation Upon Liberty and Necessity, Pleasure and Pain. And right here we have another publication, and it's a pamphlet, so I'm pretty sure it's got to be italicized. Franklin returned to Philadelphia in 1726 to find Deborah Reed already married. Over the next few years, Franklin held varied jobs such as bookkeeper, shopkeeper, and currency cutter. He also fathered his son William during this time. Late in the year of 1727, Franklin organized a group called Junto, which, and here you have another who-which clause, which was a social and improvement study group made mainly up of young men. And so after that, after this who-which, put in parentheses for me, who-which, so that I know that you're doing it on purpose. See, right now I'm not sure if you've done this on purpose or if it's just part of your writing, but you need to be sure that you're deliberately doing these dress-ups. After publishing the pamphlet, The Nature and Necessity of Paper Currency, Franklin was able to purchase the Pennsylvania Gazette newspaper. Okay, we have a title again. From his former boss. No need for this comma. We usually don't put commas in front of prepositional phrases. Franklin was elected official printer in Pennsylvania. He was also to take Deborah Reed as his wife after her husband disappeared after stealing a slave. Their first son, Francis, was born in 1732, though he died 4 years later of smallpox. Franklin's prominence and success grew in the 1730s, especially after the publication of Poor Richard's Almanac. Pretty sure that's misspelled, but you have it in quotes. That's good. And usually for works of smaller works, we use quotes or italics. Franklin amassed real estate businesses and also organized the Union Fire Company to counteract fire hazards. Good use of your semicolon there. He also established the first lending library. He was elected Grand Marshal, Master of Pennsylvania Masons. So what I want you to do is just go through here and see if you can find your dress-ups. And remember, if you want to change one of your words, you can always right-click on it. Like refuse. So we want a strong verb, and you can look up synonyms. And there's not one for that one. So let's go on to another one. He was well known in the scientific community for his wit, not status as political appointee from a fledgling country. His reputation facilitated. See, this is a nice strong verb. If you would just mark your strong verbs, I'm not sure if you did that on purpose or not. And so I want to know that you know when a verb is strong. And verbs are everything in writing. After a decade in France, Franklin returned to America in 1785. He was elected. I'm looking for some verbs here. With many Americans' early heroes, successes take the spotlight while failure is never mentioned. With many Americans' early heroes. That doesn't make sense. I'm thinking you might mean early American heroes. And then that would mean early American heroes. Successes take the spotlight. Let's see if we can find a stronger verb. How about capture? And see, that gives us a stronger verb. So you can right-click on the words, and it gives you synonyms. With many early American heroes, successes capture the spotlight while failure is rarely mentioned. But as any great entrepreneurial failures are paving stones to triumphs. But as any great entrepreneur failures. That one doesn't make sense to me either. But as any great entrepreneurial failures are paving stones to triumph, Franklin said, "Do not fear mistakes. You will know failures. Continue to reach out." He took his own advice. Franklin mapped the Gulf Stream, invented swimming fins, the lightning rods, musical instruments, established college, amassed scores, and other amazing accomplishments. His self-education earned him degrees from Harvard, Yale, and Oxford University, and the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. He tried to begin a magazine, but it failed. So for the rest of your paper, go through and mark your dress-ups for me. And also, I want you to read it out loud like I've been reading it out loud. Usually when you read a paper out loud, you're going to catch your mistakes. And sometimes what I do to help me catch my mistakes is I'll read the paper backwards. And that means you'll start at the end and you'll read this sentence. Franklin shaped America's life as we know it. That's not the last sentence. This is why he is often called the first American, a fitting image for all. This is why he is often called the first American, a fitting image for all. That sentence doesn't make sense to me either. But go backwards and read it, and that helps you not to get distracted by the flow of it. And many scientific advantages, his bifocals, lightning, electricity. This is some type of fragment. That's not a sentence. So you need to go back and clean this up, because just by what I've been reading, I'm afraid I would have had to give you all of that. And so on this paper, because there were no dress-ups, your spelling looked okay. I didn't find any, but your punctuation and usage. So you would end up with a 7 on this. So I want you to redo this and resubmit it to me. You can resubmit it next Monday. If you can get it done before then, let me know, and we can move forward a little bit quicker. I need your dress-ups marked. I need you to clean it up. Read it out loud. And right here, I can see that that is a spelling error. So read it out loud to yourself. If you need to, read it backwards, sentence by sentence. The scope of things he applied himself to was too broad. It seemed a shame. Okay, this is a run-on sentence. The scope of things he applied himself to, wrong kind of to, was too broad. It seemed a shame. The scope, I'm not sure where you're going with that. Read it out loud. Make sure it makes sense. Read it backwards. The image of Benjamin came through history with the image of the $100 bill. You've got that backwards. The $100 bill. His character, a bold man with a long coat holding a string with a key attached. This right here, that is a run-on sentence. You're going to need to either put a semicolon here or start a new sentence. You've got to have just one subject, noun, verb. Unless that subject, noun, verb is within a clause, each sentence only gets one subject, noun, verb. But the work shall not is lost. Not sure what that is either. I should be able to read it backwards and it still makes sense. For it will appear once more in a new and more eloquent edition and corrected by the author. He completed his will a year prior to his death. Franklin had written his epitaph when he was 22. The body of B. Franklin, printer, and lies here, food for worms. I'm not sure this is correct either. That doesn't make any sense either. Read it backwards, sentence by sentence. Make sure that sentence can stand alone and make sense. Mark your dress-ups. And then resubmit it by next Monday. It's the end of the video.